God's children are not for sale. Actually, they are. See, sex sellers are selling God's children for one reason. Sex buyers are buying them for reasons of absolute depravity. My name is Russ Tuttle with the Stop Trafficking Project. I have been inundated with text messages and phone calls and emails and social media requests wondering about my opinion about this mantra that's going all around the country right now: God's children are not for sale. One of the challenges with sometimes how these things can be portrayed in movies is that it's not always accurate. The movie that I've not seen, called Sound of Freedom, I am told is the mostly true story of Tim Ballard. Guy doing amazing work. However, most people don't understand that that's not the majority of how trafficking is working. It also kind of works the same way as a movie Pretty Woman, or maybe the Taken series. Sometimes there creates this false narrative. So here's what I need us to understand is I've had requests come to me wondering when our organization, the Stop Trafficking Project, is going to take a trip to go rescue kids. That's literally not what we do. In fact, there are not many organizations that do that. The vast majority of you should not be doing that. Let me unpack for you what sex trafficking in America actually looks like. You see, it's not about a creepy vehicle and an abduction. It's about the seduction of our kids online. Most people think there's a false narrative that sex trafficking of children could never happen in my zip code or where I live in the United States of America. And I want to unpack for you that there's a reality check that we all need to have. And then the encouraging thing is there is something you can do. Maybe you've seen some movies recently and you're highly motivated to do something. Well, there are some things you can do. Let me give you some insight into 3 words. You need to kind of get away from the hype and understand 3 words. It's about the exploitation of vulnerability. What you need to do is identify the vulnerability in the kid that you care about or kids you care about in your smallest circle of influence, and then expand that out within your community. Identify the vulnerabilities in the kids that you care about, and then understand the role that life online can potentially play in exploiting those vulnerabilities. Because you see, here's the reality. You don't need to fly to a jungle somewhere and rescue a kid. What you need to understand is the vulnerability in the kids, and then understand this. There are perverts, predators, and pimps preying on our kids' vulnerabilities when our kids are online. And their vulnerabilities look like this: boredom, loneliness, isolation, depression, suicide, cyberbullying, controlling relationships, and pornography. All these things work in this toxic environment where a lot of times our kids are telling us that everyone online is so nice. He's so nice. She's so nice. They are so nice. And yet the reality is, what we are finding is that apps like TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat are actually hunting grounds for perverts, predators, and pimps. You don't have to go to a jungle. You need to know what the kids in your life are doing online and on apps. And there are so many apps that we could talk about, but if it's got a messaging feature, this is the place primarily where kids are being exposed. So let me give you some insight into what the crime of domestic minor sex trafficking really looks like. You see, domestic minor sex trafficking is American kids protected by American law. It's not get on a plane and fly to another country and rescue kids. It's not kids on the southern border. It's kids right in the community where you live. It's kids in your schools and in your clubs and your churches and your neighborhood and wherever you live. Those vulnerabilities are being exploited. So in our organization, the Stop Trafficking Project, our lane is to end it before it starts. We are honored to be in that lane. And so what we do is we go into communities and we gather around schools as the hub, and we educate and empower adults who are associated with schools. And then we do age-appropriate school presentations, kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd to 5th grade, 6th to 8th, and 9th to 12th. Let me give you some insight into what kids are telling us to give you insight into what this actually looks like. 6th grade girl approached me with choke marks around her neck where her 8th grade boyfriend had choked her out while engaging in sexual activity with her. He used his iPhone, he recorded it. In less than 24 hours, almost 3 dozen, mostly adult men, were figuring out how to pay an 8th grade boy to sexually assault his 8th grade girlfriend because he was advertising her online. That's sex trafficking. In one recent school, 7 students, independent of each other, revealed to me that there was a family member requiring they provide a sexual favor to another family member if they wanted to eat. The thing of value being traded for a sexual favor was a meal. That's sex trafficking. Increasingly, you see, because it's not about a creepy vehicle and an abduction, but it's about the seduction of our kids online, what's happening is when kids feel bored, lonely, isolated, depressed, suicidal, in a controlling relationship, engaging in cyberbullying, or maybe cyberbullying others, or maybe there's a porn addiction, what's happening is the perverts, preyers, and pimps are preying on that. What does it makes the grooming process after the casing process that much easier. And so kids are falling for things. And so because the porn industry is teaching kids a lot of false narratives about their sexual behavior, a lot of kids think that sexting is the new flirting. And so we see this commonly. And so the crime of sextortion is growing very fast amongst teenagers because they're willingly taking their clothes off, sending naked pictures. And so we're then seeing perverts, predators, and pimps using that against kids, and then they'll take those pictures. And I had a kid recently who spent $18,000 on a credit card trying to keep from becoming famous online because he took a picture and sent it to a female who said, "I showed you mine, show me yours." You see, the goal of that story was that they wanted to take this boy's pictures and then exploit him online. What kids don't know is whether they pay the money or not, the kids are already famous online. And see, perverts, predators, and pimps are in the hunting grounds. You don't have to go to a jungle to rescue a kid. They're in the hunting grounds of life online. Recently I had a young boy in 8th grade telling me that he had a severe porn addiction. Started when he was really young. 8th grade boy. He said it had been 6 months since he'd gotten more than 2 hours without engaging in pornography. The tragic story is this boy's father was in jail for assaulting the kids in his family, of whom the 8th grade boy is the oldest. This 8th grade boy's earliest memory is of pornography that his father introduced to him. You see, we're not talking about bad kids. We're talking about kids who are being preyed upon when they are online. These are the real hunting grounds where our kids are falling prey to perverts, predators, and pimps. This young boy, I've never been so proud of a young man in 8th grade. He wanted help. He understood the science of the brain as we explained it in age-appropriate ways in our school assembly. He said he desperately needed help. His concern was that because of his addiction, he was afraid he was going to hurt girls the same age as he was. And there were people online who'd been recruiting him to do these things and then trying to encourage him to send pictures to them with the goal that they could then sell those young minors. That's sex trafficking. You don't need to fly somewhere and kick down a door and rescue a kid. If you're a member of the general public, that's not your job. That's the job of law enforcement. That's the job of professionals. What can you do? Well, you can engage in your community. You can invest in one kid at a time. You can know what they're doing online. You can understand their vulnerabilities and realize that anything and everything I can do to keep them from being exploited, understanding the role that life online plays, it's going to be amazing and do incredible things. We were recently in a junior high where an 8th grade boy had started a sexting ring. He'd convinced several junior high girls to take their clothes off. This young boy had started a new app, and within the app he put a photo vault. Within that photo vault were pictures of the girls. His long-term goal, as we understood later, was to potentially sell those girls to mostly adult men, some females. That's attempted sex trafficking. In another school, I had 3 young girls approach me at the end of assembly. They were concerned about their friend. This young girl, 7th grade girl, was convinced that the boy she was talking to online was the same age she was. Why? Because he sent her pictures. Turned out it was actually an adult male that law enforcement told me later was going to drive from another state to the state where this girl was at the end of our school assembly to pick her up. His goal was to turn her into a victim of the crime of domestic minor sex trafficking. Why? Because God's children are for sale, and we need to understand that. What can you do? You can engage with the kids you care about. You can give to organizations locally who are not about hype, who are actually doing things to help kids. I would encourage you, if you went and saw recent movies, to spend at least what you spent for tickets and popcorn and a soda and maybe some candy and donate to an organization that's doing really good work. If you don't know where to send your funds, vet different organizations. You can give to us, the Stop Trafficking Project. Our goal literally is to end domestic minor sex trafficking before it starts by disrupting this exploitation of vulnerability. We think it's much more valuable for a kid to never need to be rescued, for a kid to never need to be seen by a sexual assault nurse examiner, for a kid to never need a lifetime of rehabilitative services. We're having tremendous impact. This is one of the primary ways I think that we can all engage and help out together. StopTraffickingProject.com is a great place where you could go if you didn't know what to do with your dollar. Beyond that, what can you do? You can pull people together within your community, use the momentum of passion right now, but please bring some knowledge to it. To not just be passionate and be a online social media keyboard warrior, and we need to do something about it. Simply telling people God's children are not for sale is not solving the issue. We're not moving the needle of ending sex trafficking children in America. So I want to encourage you to take the passion that you have and add knowledge to it, be properly educated, and then empowered. It's what we do here at the Stop Trafficking Project, and I'm grateful that awareness is building, but sometimes awareness can be a little bit dangerous if it's not the proper kind of awareness. So please educate yourself so you can actually make a difference in your community. There are so many more stories that we can tell in our lane of kids who come forward. Recently, a boy in 2nd grade had heard our young, age-appropriate presentation for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd graders. And he was on a particular game, and there was an adult male who entered into that space, and this adult male was trying to get this little boy in 2nd grade to remove his clothes and take inappropriate pictures. Because of what we'd empowered this little boy through our school assembly, he went to his mom and, long story short, disclosed what was happening. The tools that we had given to him. The boy never took his clothes off, never did anything. He stopped that predator in his tracks right there online. That is literally the most rewarding thing. You can do that in your community by educating, empowering the students in your life. Know what they're doing online, know who they're talking to. You don't have to be an expert in technology. You do need to recognize that technology itself is not the enemy, but you do need to understand the role that technology can play in exploiting vulnerabilities in kids. Know enough about it, but then be an expert in this. Be an expert in the kid and the kids that you care about. I'm Russ Tuttle with the Stop Trafficking Project. I hope this has been a little bit helpful. You can check us out at thestoptraffickingproject.com. Go out there, keep kids safe, take your passion, add knowledge to it, and together let's move the needle of ending the crime of sex trafficking of American kids protected by American law in every single zip code in these United States of America.